Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. It's time to give our recommendations on which HDR gaming monitor you should buy. Our previous update to this video was over a year ago. There have been so many HDR monitor releases since then that this video update is long overdue. 2025 has been a difficult year for monitor recommendations because there's been a lot more price volatility. I'm going to try to do my best to navigate this situation and still make this guide useful for people in North America and other regions around the world. As usual, there will be many monitors recommended in this video, so hopefully when it comes time to hit the buy button, at least one of those options will be appealing. We have links in the description below to check current pricing and purchase these monitors if you're interested. As with our previous best of videos, I tend to talk about and recommend monitors I've personally tested and know to be good, or monitors that are very similar to products I have tested. It's always worth going back and checking out the dedicated monitor reviews we produce for more in-depth thoughts on each product, but these recommendations are not sponsored in any way by any monitor manufacturer. They're based on our testing and reviews. But before I get into my top picks, a quick word from the non-monitor sponsor of our best monitor series.
Today's video is brought to you by Insta360 and their new Link 2 4K webcam, now available in white. This unit features a high-performance half-inch sensor delivering crisp 4K video with an AI-powered audio algorithm, providing great audio quality via the built-in microphone. Building on the original Link, the Link 2 also has, you guessed it, AI tracking for individuals and groups, as well as gesture control and auto framing. It now also offers modes such as customizable backgrounds and effects, so if you, like me, are sick of the hardware box studio, you can dip down to your local coffee shop and just hang out and relax. The 4K 30 FPS camera offers excellent video quality even in low light situations, such as this. Nice and dark now. I think I look pretty good on the screen, still nice and clear. So really, for a cost-effective solution, the image quality is amazing and can probably really only be bested by something like a professional digital SLR. The Link 2 is also equipped with a gimbal, making it perfect for demos and presentations. Balin, get out of my presentation. It also pairs perfectly with the new Wave speakerphone. Black Friday sales are now live, so check the link in the video description and make sure to use our code for $50 off the entire Link 2 range.
Right now, the best 4K HDR gaming monitors on the market are 32-inch 4K OLEDs. 27-inch models are available now as well, but to me, the larger 32-inch panel size is more immersive for 4K gaming, and prices aren't too different to the smaller models. But why OLED and not LCD in this category? Well, there are two main qualities to an OLED panel that significantly enhance the gaming experience relative to an LCD. One is their lightning-fast transition times, leading to elite motion clarity that exceeds an LCD operating at the same refresh rate. And the other is their individual pixel control, which allows pixels to fully switch off to display deep, rich, zero-level blacks, and it means there's per-pixel local dimming for brilliant HDR control at the pixel level, no backlight zones to worry about. Since the release of 4K OLED panels, there has been a battle for the best panel type between QD-OLED and WOLED. As we're now coming towards the end of 2025, based on current monitors, I think this battle is largely over. The best 32-inch 4K monitors right now use WOLED panels, and the best value use QD-OLED, so it really depends which way you want to go. The overall best 32-inch 4K HDR monitor, in my opinion, is the Asus ROG Strix XG32UC WMG. This is a 32-inch 4K WOLED with a 240Hz refresh rate, and the reason why I think this is the best is because of its excellent feature set. It provides a stunning glossy true black finish, which is superior to QD-OLED glossy, and does a better job of preserving blacks in all usage environments. QD-OLED has a pesky problem of blacks appearing grey in brighter rooms, which is a complete non-issue on the WOLED-based UC-WMG. There are two other advantages to WOLED over QD-OLED. One is better HDR performance, thanks to more consistent brightness output with no panel dimming in bright scenes, and peak brightness that still reaches 1000 nits. 4K 240Hz WOLED also offers dual mode support, allowing the monitor to run in a 1080p 480Hz configuration. This mode is super clear for competitive gaming and adds to the versatility of the product for those that play multiple types of game. Asus throw in some great features like their Neo Proximity Sensor, OLED Anti-Flicker Mode, ELMB, and unlocked color controls. Now, QD-OLED does have some advantages, including a wider color volume with higher color brightness and better uniformity, but I think the overall package that the latest glossy WOLED panels offer is the best on the market. The one potential holdup here for buyers will be the price. I was originally told the XG32UC WMG should cost $950 US as a global MSRP, but with tariffs it's actually being sold for $1,100, which is pricey. The cheapest 240Hz QD OLEDs start at about $850, so this premium WOLED offering is 30% more expensive. It's a great product, but whether you want to spend 30% more to get a best of the best monitor is up to you. It's not an outrageous difference, especially at the high end of the market, but it's not a value choice, that's for sure. The best value 32-inch 4K OLEDs are the current crop of 240Hz QD OLEDs, which as I said start around $850 to $900 for monitors like the Gigabyte FO32U2, MSI MPG 321URX and 321UPX, as well as several others. If your priority is a 32-inch OLED screen and want the best bang for buck, this is the way I'd go. The great news about buying a QD OLED instead of a WOLED is that most of the performance characteristics are the same. At 4K 240Hz you still get lightning fast response times and superb motion clarity, only missing out on the 1080p 480Hz mode, which is not available here. You also still get amazing HDR image quality thanks to per pixel control, deep blacks and bright highlights. While QD OLED doesn't handle bright scenes as well as WOLED in my opinion, the HDR gaming experience QD OLED offers is great, and overall brightness is pretty good, especially in darker scenes with small bright elements. There are screen coding concerns with QD OLED, though despite worse handling of ambient light, QD OLED Glossy does a better job at preventing reflections than WOLED Glossy. Text quality is pretty similar on both panel types, and most QD OLEDs I've tested come with great factory calibration. Because QD OLED panels are more widespread than glossy WOLED, there are far more options to choose from, and pricing is more competitive as a result. I've tested a ton of these QD OLEDs and I haven't found one that is impossible to recommend. Of course, there are small feature and design differences between each model, but there isn't really a bad option that performs notably worse than the others. Brightness, for example, pretty much identical across all 32-inch 4K QD OLEDs, and most offer the same sorts of HDR modes. Unless you specifically want a feature like DisplayPort 2.1 or Dolby Vision, neither of which I believe is necessary for gaming right now, you should just buy the cheapest model that satisfies your requirements. Some candidates that I've tested include the MSI 321URX, 321UPX, and 322URX. All of these are great, but the 322URX tends to be more expensive as it includes DisplayPort 2.1, so generally I'd opt for the 321 models instead. There's the Asus ROG Swift PG32 UCDM, which has a great feature set. There's the curved Dell Alienware AW3225QF. There's the Gigabyte FO32U2P, which also includes DisplayPort 2.1. There's the Samsung Odyssey OLED G81SF, and many other models that we haven't tested. The thing to keep in mind here is that there's only one 32-inch 4K 240Hz QD OLED panel currently on the market, and all of these variants use the same panel. Another option to consider is going with a 165Hz 4K OLED instead, which can often shave a bit off the price. This refresh rate variant exists for both QD OLED and WOLED. Asus, for example, offer the XG32UC-WG, which is exactly the same glossy WOLED as the UC-WMG, but cut back to 165Hz. You'll find similar models on the QD OLED side, like the MSI 321UP. Generally, you can save $100 to $150 opting for the lower refresh rate, which isn't a huge saving, but is something to consider if you want the lowest cost monitor with this type of panel. If 32 inches is too large for you, there are a multitude of great 27-inch 4K QD OLEDs to choose from, all of which perform very similarly to 32-inch QD OLEDs I've just been talking about. With no 27-inch WOLED panel available, QD OLED wins at the smaller size by default, and here I'd choose the Dell Alienware AW2725Q in most situations. This monitor is regularly the cheapest 27-inch 4K QD OLED, and with performance very similar to other options, there's little reason to spend more on something else. It's just as bright as other models, it looks excellent for HDR gaming, it uses a glossy panel with deep blacks, and the only real downside is it lacks some of the features found on premium models like USB-C display signal input. The AW2725Q is typically in a good position because it has an MSRP of $900 US, which at baseline is cheaper than most competitors, but these days it can regularly be found on sale for $800 or even as low as $700 US. This makes it cheaper than the next best option, the Asus ROG Strix XG27UC-DMG, which is a $980 monitor that rarely dips below $900. The Asus model has some additional features that are worth considering, like the Neo proximity sensor, KVM switch and unlocked sRGB mode, but it's impossible to justify spending 20 to 35% more compared to the Dell variant. Some other options to consider are the Asus ROG Swift PG27UCDM, MSI 272URX, Gigabyte MO27U2, and even the Samsung OLED G81SF variant that I haven't tested. The PG27 UCDM is a great feature set but is very expensive, while the other models are not standouts in terms of features and are rarely price competitive with the Alienware. But if pricing looks good in your region, they could be a great choice. There are three main reasons to pick a 4K HDR capable LCD as your gaming monitor in 2025. The first is that you don't want to deal with the potential burn-in concerns that come with OLEDs. If you use your display for both gaming and productivity, LCDs are a safer choice with the potential for better longevity. The second is that you want a 4K HDR monitor, but you don't want to fork out at least $800 on an OLED. LCDs with mini LED backlights are much cheaper. And third, maybe you just like the extreme brightness that LCDs have to offer, with current models pushing full screen brightness above 1000 nits. The models I can recommend at the moment are the MSI MPG 274UR DFW E16M, the AOC U27 G4XM, and the KTC M27P6, which all appear to use the same panel. They are 27-inch 4K 160Hz IPS LCDs with the 1152 zone mini LED backlight and support for a 1080p 320Hz dual mode configuration. Unlike older models I've tested, this new wave performs well and avoids annoying deal breaker flaws. With full array local dimming, these 4K LCDs are genuinely capable of displaying HDR images properly, unlike fake HDR products that lack local dimming and often labeled with misleading HDR 400 specs. 1152 backlight zones allows for a large increase in contrast over SDR monitors with deeper blacks and decent control, meaning bright and dark elements can be shown on screen at the same time. This creates the dazzling, impressive HDR effect that you're paying for. It's not just the screen being run at a higher brightness level. Speaking of brightness, these new monitors are capable of some very high results, especially in brighter scenes. The KTC M27P6 achieves over 1700 nits in real scene tests. Along with good shadow detail and a fast dimming response, we get solid performance for HDR gaming that takes things to the next level relative to even cheaper SDR products. In the right circumstances, these LCDs can look remarkably similar to an OLED. Motion performance is pretty good across these models. They are typical fast IPS panels with different optimization depending on the model you get. The KTC is well balanced for the middle part of the range, and the AOC more so towards 160Hz. The 1080p 320Hz dual mode increases clarity for multiplayer gaming, so these are quite versatile products, capable of HDR gaming for single player, 320Hz gaming and multiplayer titles, and productivity work without burn-in. You can expect to pay between $400 and $500 US for one of these monitors, which is about a 30 to 40% premium over basic 4K SDR monitors. As a mid-range 4K option, sitting between 4K SDR LCDs and OLEDs, that seems reasonable to me. I also don't have a strong preference between the MSI, KTC, and AOC models at their current price. The MSI is $500, the KTC $470, and I expect the AOC to be a little cheaper. That's all very reasonable given their performance and feature differences. The MSI and KTC models have better feature sets, while the AOC is more basic. The only main deciding factor here is whether you want the mini LED backlight tuned more for brightness or more for contrast. The KTC model is the brightest and pushes brightness the highest, occasionally at the expense of contrast. The MSI and AOC models are still bright, but favour contrast and black levels in HDR scenes. There's no right or wrong presentation, and I'd recommend all three models depending on pricing and availability in your region. If you're after a 1440p HDR gaming monitor, there are more options than ever and price competition is fierce. Like with the 4K category, the best 1440p HDR monitors are OLEDs, and right now there are two main OLED panel variants, QD-OLED and WOLED. In previous guides, I've tended to recommend QD-OLED because I felt that panel type has offered the best mix of performance and value, but with new 4th gen primary RGB tandem WOLED panels hitting the market towards the end of 2025, I'm changing this recommendation and now focusing on WOLED, as I think the updated panels are the best for 1440p gaming. 4th gen WOLED has several qualities that make it superior to today's QD-OLEDs. The key quality is brightness. The latest WOLED panels are noticeably brighter in both SDR and HDR content. In SDR, this is the brightest panel type you can get, pushing up to 330 nits versus 250 nits for 1440p QD-OLED. In HDR, we also see over 300 nits in bright scenes and up to 1400 nits peak, with some real-world results exceeding QD-OLED peak performance. It does all of this without any of the frustrating panel dimming you get with QD-OLED in bright scenes, which means you get a more consistent brightness experience across a wide range of HDR content. WOLED's layer structure also does a superior job of handling ambient light. One of the main issues with QD-OLED is how it reflects light in brighter rooms, raising blacks and making the screen look grey. This hurts one of the key selling points to OLED, which is its deep blacks. This isn't anywhere near as much of a concern with WOLED, so this panel type tends to look blacker and higher contrast. There's not a huge difference between WOLED and QD-OLED in dark rooms, but if you use your display during the day or under artificial lights, WOLED takes the crown. The 4th Gen WOLED panel also brings with it several key improvements over previous WOLED panels, including an updated subpixel structure for better text rendering and a wider color gamut. These changes eliminated some of the gaps between WOLED and QD-OLED that were present with previous comparisons. My primary recommendation in this category is the Asus ROG Strix XG27 AQWMG. It's a 27-inch 1440p 280Hz monitor that uses a 4th Gen WOLED panel. This is the best option in my opinion due to its excellent true black glossy coating, which preserves black levels and has fantastic clarity with no grain. If you want the most vibrant experience with colors that pop, glossy WOLED is the way to go, but just be aware that reflections can be an issue in some circumstances. Asus have also done a great job in terms of overall performance and features. Motion performance is of course very good at 280Hz on an OLED, and Asus offer fantastic factory calibration with tons of adjustable settings in the SDR and HDR modes to customize it to your liking. We also get the latest Asus extras like ELMB black frame insertion, the anti-flicker modes, and the Neo proximity sensor, all of which are useful additions. The XG27 AQWMG will be available shortly at a price point of $600 US, which is extremely competitive given its excellent performance. But another option to consider might be the Gigabyte MO27Q28G, which uses the same panel and is $50 cheaper at $550 US. The main difference between the Asus and Gigabyte models is the Gigabyte uses a matte coating, which is better at eliminating reflections, but overall I prefer the Asus glossy coating, so I'd rather spend the extra $50 to get it. Outside of that, the two monitors offer very similar performance and feature sets, so it's hard to go wrong. Like with the Asus model, the MO27Q28G is expected to be broadly available within the next month or so, and it's started to roll out in some regions right now. If it's not available for you just yet, I'd check in with your retailers regularly. With both of these models set to occupy the $550 to $600 price range, it's difficult to recommend a QD-OLED at their typical price. The going rate for a 1440p, 240 or 280Hz QD-OLED is between $500 and $600 US, so in the best cases you'll save a small amount of money going QD-OLED, and worst cases, these options are a similar price or more expensive. The primary RGB tandem WOLED panels I've just been talking about are better, and at say $500 versus $550, I'd just recommend spending 10% more to get the WOLED screen. But there is a point at which QD-OLED options come back into contention. Here in Australia, for example, the MO27Q28G is $900 Aussie, matching the US price after currency conversion, but you can get a Dell Alienware AW2725D, a 27-inch 1440p 280Hz QD-OLED for just $700. That's a 22% saving compared to the Gigabyte, and at that sort of price, I'd definitely consider QD-OLED. The AW2725D is a great product, lots of strengths, it's a monitor I recommend, and I think about a 20% difference is fair between this and 4th Gen WOLED. Depending on what I wanted and how much I wanted to spend on a premium product, I could go either way. The AW2725D is the QD-OLED that you should first consider because it's often the best value across the regions I looked at, though in the US it's not especially amazing at $500 US. Some other options worth considering are the MSI MAG271 QPX24 and 273 QPX24, along with the Gigabyte MO27Q2. All three of these are 240Hz monitors compared to the Dell at 280Hz. At a similar price to 4th Gen WOLED, you can also get a higher refresh rate QD-OLED, something 360Hz, like the Dell Alienware AW2725DF, Gigabyte Aorus FO27Q3, or MSI MPG271QRX. 360Hz isn't a massive improvement over 280Hz, but it is slightly clearer and has low input latency, so it could be a better choice for competitive gamers. There's also super expensive 540Hz models available if you want to spend $1,000, over $1,000. I think the QD-OLED model is around $750, so that's something to keep in mind. So just make sure to assess pricing in your region because, yeah, it's a super competitive category in 2025, and I wouldn't be surprised to see QD-OLED sales dropping some of these products below $500 US. A great alternative to a 1440p OLED for HDR gaming is a mini LED LCD. These screens are brighter, avoid burn-in while being used to display desktop apps, and are typically much cheaper. My first choice in this category is the AOC Q27G40 XMN. If you want a display that's a good price, packs a good resolution and refresh rate, plus delivers great image quality for both SDR and HDR gaming, the Q27G40 XMN is a very solid choice. The Q27G40 XMN is a 27-inch 1440p 180Hz VA LCD with an impressive 1152 zone mini LED local dimming backlight. This provides true HDR hardware capabilities, unlike similarly priced fake HDR 400 products, and right now you can get all of this at a very attractive price of as low as $250 US. It's sometimes $300, but I have seen it as low as $250. Competition is increasing for low-cost true HDR LCDs, but I'm yet to test something as competitive or well-performing as this. With 1152 zones, you get much tighter dimming in HDR scenes than edge-lit dim monitors, leading to a better contrast ratio in real-world content, richer blacks and shadows, and a high peak brightness that exceeds 1000 nits. The combination of a VA LCD panel with this many zones leads to a very good HDR experience. This is proper local dimming with fantastic control and minimal blooming. If you want next-level image quality that takes the experience beyond a typical SDR screen, the Q27G40 XMN is what you'll be after. This isn't just an HDR monitor though. With a 1440p 180Hz panel, you're getting a great resolution and refresh rate for today's games. Motion performance is pretty good from a VA LCD, and while it's not quite at the level of today's fast IPS panels, it's very solid with minimal dark smearing issues. As this is a monitor you'd primarily buy for single-player HDR gaming, I think the motion experience it offers is perfectly fine. The G40 XMN also avoids some of the pitfalls of other low-cost HDR gaming monitors. It has reduced levels of flickering compared to its predecessor with no pixel inversion problem, along with nice optimization of the SDR and HDR modes. The main downsides here are a crappy fixed height stand and weak viewing angles, the latter of which is common among VA LCDs. Early units also seem to suffer a bit from poor firmware tuning, something that can't be resolved through firmware updates as this monitor doesn't support them. When I tested this monitor, I didn't experience any of these early performance issues, but other reviewers like Ratings did, so there is a potential lottery here when buying a unit. However, in the 5 months since I tested this screen, I would imagine most of the new models on store shelves have the latest good firmware version. The Q27G40 XMN is a great deal in the US at $250 to $300, and it's also typically a fantastic choice here in Australia. But unfortunately, the monitor is not available in Europe, in which case the best option is the older version, the Q27G3 XMN. This version has a lower number of backlight zones at 336 and isn't as well tuned for motion, so typically if both models are available, I'd opt for the G40 XMN. However, it has a better height adjustable stand and somewhat superior color accuracy, so not everything is a downgrade. I do wish the availability of these AOC monitors was better. It took ages for the G3 XMN to come to Australia, but it is what it is. For now, let's move on to the final category. If you want an ultra-wide HDR gaming monitor, there are a range of great OLED options on the market today, with panel vendors providing a multitude of formats. There's a couple of standout options though, depending on the sort of ultra-wide that you're after. The best ultrawide on the market is the LG 45GX950A. It has a massive 45-inch 5120x2160W OLED panel running at 165Hz, providing a level of quality and immersion that has only been possible since its panel debuted earlier this year. It dominates your field of view at a normal desk viewing distance and is amazing for single-player gaming and simulator setups. Plus, with a higher resolution than previous 45-inch OLED ultrawides, it no longer has an inadequate pixel density and poor text quality for desktop use. The 45GX950A has a bunch of other strengths to go along with its size and resolution. This is a great HDR monitor, offering strong levels of brightness, fantastic ambient light handling, and no panel dimming concerns. It also supports dual mode, with its 2560x1080 configuration, increasing the refresh rate to 330Hz for a clarity boost in multiplayer titles. However, there are some weaker aspects to this monitor. The 800R curve is a bit too curved for my liking, though LG is set to release an adjustable curve version at some point in the future. The HDR modes are decent, but need some additional tweaking. Probably the biggest issue is the price tag. This monitor debuted at a whopping $2,000 US, and while it's since fallen to a little under $1,500, it's still one of the most expensive OLEDs on the market. It's a decent monitor in my opinion, and the best ultra-wide format, but that sort of price will restrict it to the highest end buyers. A more normal ultra-wide format that won't cost you anywhere near $1,500 is 34-inch 3440x1440, and in 2025 the options in this space are better than ever. I would recommend the Dell Alienware AW3425DW, a new and refreshed version of the AW3423DWF that we've been recommending for years, bumping the refresh rate up to 240Hz at an attractive $800 to $700 US price point. This monitor uses a QD-OLED panel, which is largely unchanged from the original 34-inch QD-OLED ultrawides we saw years ago, outside of the higher 240Hz refresh rate we now are getting. While this does mean it lacks some of the newer capabilities of the 4K panels, Dell have continued to optimize this panel really well in their AW34 series. It has great accuracy, excellent tuning, and it delivers the fast HDR gaming experience we've come to love over the years. I typically recommend this Alienware model because of its great price point, solid feature set, and excellent performance. While its normal price is $800 US, it's regularly on sale for $720, so it could be worth waiting for a discount. There are other 34-inch QD-OLED ultrawides on the market, but a lot of them are way too expensive, and others just lack the polish this Dell model provides. The older AW3423DWF is also a great choice still if you can find it cheaper than the new 25DW variant. I've seen it for below $600 US at times, but for most people, I think the AW3425DW will be the way to go. Lastly, if you want an even wider panel, there are 49-inch 5120x1440 QD-OLED panels available at up to 240Hz, providing a 32:9 aspect ratio, which is the equivalent of two 27-inch 1440p panels stitched together side by side. It's a very immersive format if you have the desk space to accommodate it, ideal for racing and flight simulators. My lukewarm recommendation in this category remains one of the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9 models, such as the G95SC or the G93SD, at around $1,000. The higher-end G95SC is the model I tested, and it comes with full Smart TV functionality. If you don't want that functionality and are fine with a more basic OST and feature set, the G93SD should be the same monitor without those features. $1,000 is a very reasonable price for this type of monitor these days, given how expensive they were to begin with. So that's it for this HDR gaming monitor recommendation video with a ton of options across OLEDs and mini LED LCDs. There are now some truly great HDR LCDs on the market, which is nice to see, and the OLED market continues to expand with more options at better prices. As always, if you do want to learn more about the monitors I've been talking about in this video, I have individual reviews available right here on Monitors Unboxed. I'd also recommend checking the links in the description for updated pricing information, as this does change over time, so check down there if you're watching this video weeks or months after it went live. We also appreciate anyone that uses those links to buy one of these monitors we've recommended in this video if you found it helpful. So anyway, that's it for this one. As always, a ton of testing and reviews goes into these recommendation guides. So if you do want to support our independent testing and analysis, the best way to do that is via our Patreon page. Links to that is in the description below. If you sign up, you get access to some pretty cool benefits. We've got our monitor spreadsheet, which has all of the OSD settings that we use and create throughout our calibration process. We've also got the ICC profiles that we generate during that review process as well. We've got our Discord community, which has a dedicated monitors channel. You can ask questions, get further recommendations about monitors in there, and I'm occasionally in there chatting with you guys. So yeah, plenty of good perks. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.